Washington head coach Kalen DeBoer is headed to Alabama to be the replacement for retired head coach Nick Saban. So, you know what that means. Washington now needs a head coach. So, let's look at some potential candidates that Washington could have interest in. These are 10 names that I've kind of seen thrown around over the last couple of hours. And some of these might be realistic, some of these might be fairly unrealistic, but we're going to break down each candidate. At the end, I'm going to give you my candidate that I think they should choose and who I think they will choose. So let's go ahead and break it down a little bit here. First off, Matt Campbell, Iowa State head coach. The luster has kind of wore off of Matt Campbell. A few years ago, Matt Campbell was a really hot name, thrown around with a lot of jobs. But at the moment, it's kind of wore off a little bit, so I don't know about him. We might have to cross him off a little later. But Washington, at the same time, isn't in the same position they were when they hired last time. They're moving to the Big Ten. They're one of the big boys now, as far as in the big conference. So you might get some more interested suitors than you would think normally. All right, next up, Pete Carroll, former Seattle Seahawks head coach, former USC coach. All right, could he just stay in Seattle, go ahead and go to Washington? I don't know how realistic this one is. I feel like Pete Carroll's probably done. He's kind of up there in age. He's actually a lot older than he looks. So I feel like he's probably done. I think he's going to serve in Seattle for the Seahawks in like an advisor role or something. But I don't know how realistic that one is. All right, one of the more interesting candidates, Jedd Fisch, Arizona head coach, has really turned Arizona around, won a lot of ball games this year at Arizona, has them kind of as a college football playoff contender next year, moving to the Big 12. Jedd Fisch would definitely be an interesting hire, I think, but we'll get to him later. All right, next up, Ryan Grubb, Washington offense coordinator, has Washington's offense really humming. They do some really impressive stuff on offense, the way he motions pre-snap, the way he gets guys open, does a really good job with that. Now, he has turned down some significant jobs before, turned down Group of Five head coaching opportunities this year, turned down last season Alabama's offense coordinator, turned down Notre Dame's offense coordinator. So he's been turning those down for a reason, because he has an end vision in mind, most likely. Now, he has been with Kalen DeBoer for a long time. Like, he's been his OC at multiple stops now, I think. So he's holding out for something. Is that for something else? You know what I mean? Does he want to go to be the Bama OC now under his head coach and then, prolong that or propel that into like Saban did with Sark, like propel that into a huge job? Does he want to do that? That's a possibility. Or he was just holding out for his buddy to go be the head coach somewhere. That way he could take over at Washington. Definitely a name to keep an eye on, Ryan Grubb. All right, so this next name, surprising name. I'm really surprised I saw this name. Kliff Kingsbury apparently has emerged as one of the front runners. Former Arizona Cardinals head coach, former Texas Tech head coach, currently works for USC in some capacity. Really surprised to see his name here, because while he has been a head coach in the NFL, he didn't have a lot of success at Texas Tech. That was with Baker Mayfield, with Patrick Mahomes. He had weapons there and still couldn't really win. So, I don't know. I find this name really interesting that it is on the table, but it is curious that I've seen this name thrown around. You know what I mean? So, usually where there's some smoke, there's fire. All right, next up, Klieman, Kansas State head coach. Really good head coach, these next two options. He's won a Big 12 championship at Kansas State. Washington would be a step up because, like I said, you're trying to get into those Power 2 conferences now if you're a head coach, probably. That may be in the Big 10 or SEC. This could be a valid opportunity here. I read somewhere that he does have ties with the Washington AD, so that's something to keep an eye on. Apparently, they both went to Northern Iowa, went to that college at the same time, and then also crossed paths at some point there as well. But definitely an interesting tie there. Definitely an interesting option. Chris Klieman is a winning head coach, a proven head coach now that he can win ball games. You know what I mean? So you could definitely do worse than Klieman. All right, next up, Lance Leipold, Kansas head coach. Similar situation. Has won a ton of ball games here. All right, has done pretty good at getting Kansas turned around. A borderline top 25 team every year now, probably. Similar to DeBoer, won ball games at lower levels first and then made his rise. But definitely an interesting name, Leipold. All right, next up, Deion Sanders, Colorado head coach. Okay, so normally I'm a little skeptical on how good of a head coach Deion is. I know he can pull in transfers, but, how good of a coach is he, but without just dominating them as far as having that much more talent. But I think the fit at Washington would be interesting. it'd be a different style for Washington that they haven't tried yet. You know what I mean? Would kind of get you more style points is in terms of competing with Oregon. You know, now you're still beating Oregon like you have been obviously the last 2 years regardless, but would kind of get you some more style points in there. Deion be an interesting fit that I really don't hate, believe it or not. All right, next up, Jonathan Smith, Michigan State head coach currently, former Oregon State head coach, hasn't coached a game for Michigan State yet, but is he kicking himself right now for not holding out like a couple extra months? Because he probably would have been the lead runner for this Washington job right now if he had not already taken the Michigan State job. Played at Oregon State. Would he be curious and pulling like a Manny Diaz here and going back on his word? You know, I mean, you commit to this school and then, you know what, on second thought, this job just came open. Let me run it back and go ahead and head back out west. Interesting thought. I don't think he does that. I think he's set at Michigan State right now. But like I say, he did go to school at Oregon State. So could he be trying to get back out there? It's possible. All right, next up, a name. I don't know how serious this name is, but I have seen his name floated around with multiple jobs this offseason, which usually means, like I said, where there's smoke, there is fire. Kyle Whittingham, Utah head coach. I don't think he leaves Utah, but he was in the running apparently for the A&M job as well. So I don't know. It's just really curious to me that his name's getting floated around here. I don't know if he's trying to get a raise because sometimes you'll see that, you know, kind of like, I guess, with the Bama situation. Sometimes you'll see that, you know, your name will be floated around, but you're trying to get a raise out of it. So you'll interview for it just because. But I don't know. You could do worse than Kyle Whittingham. I don't know how willing he is to leave Utah. I feel like he would have done it by now if he was going to. But definitely an interesting head coach. All right, so let's go ahead and break down it. Cross out some names that I don't think are realistic. Let's go ahead and get that out of the way first. All right, we'll start with where to begin. I will start with Kyle Whittingham. Excellent choice, but I don't think he leaves Utah. Like I said, I think he would have probably already left if he was going to, you know what I mean? And I feel like maybe that's just me. I feel like he would have rather gone to A&M than Washington, you know what I mean, for example. So I think Kyle Whittingham is a no-go. All right, next name I'm going to cross off the list. Sorry, guys. Pete Carroll, if I can highlight this freaking thing. I don't think he's a realistic option. Now, if you could somehow pull him in, it's not a bad option by any means. He's definitely a good head coach and, you know, one of the best in the last 20 years. I read somewhere he needs to coach like one more year to be eligible for the College Football Hall of Fame. So, you know, 1 year leads you into the Big Ten. Hey, why not? But, yeah, I don't think that's a realistic option here. Next one I'm going to cross off, Matt Campbell. All right. I think, like I said earlier, the luster's kind of wore off of Matt Campbell. He definitely could do worse than Matt Campbell, but I feel like they're going to go a different direction here. I don't think they go with Matt Campbell. All right, next name I'm going to cross off, Jonathan Smith. All right, I do think the fit here is interesting because, like I said, he is from out west as far as playing at Oregon State. Has had success at Oregon State. Washington is a step up from that, so you could definitely win, you know, on that side, on that coast. But I feel like he's probably go ahead and set now in his ways at Michigan State and has already kind of got things rolling now. Do I want to go back and kind of start over? Probably not. So I don't think he's a realistic option there. All right, next one I'm going to cross off, Deion Sanders. While I do think the fit is intriguing, I don't know. He hasn't proven himself enough at the D1 level, in my opinion, to kind of be worthy of this job. All right, next one I'm going to cross off here is going to be – this is actually tough because I think these 5 candidates are realistic. This is probably your top 5 candidates. While I don't necessarily, if I was doing it, Kliff Kingsbury wouldn't be a part of it. It is kind of weird that his name has been thrown around on there. So, I don't know. I find that hard to believe, but then again, I don't want to cross him off. But that is probably out of these 5 who I would cross off, Kliff Kingsbury. But then again, it would be a flashy hire, I guess. You know what I mean? He's definitely going to bring in clicks, as Dan Lanning loves to say. All right, next up, these top 4 are really tough here to break these down because Ryan Grubb is obviously not a head coach, so that kind of makes it harder on him here compared to these other guys. These other guys are all good head coaches, I believe, and would be good candidates at Washington. But I don't know. What route are they going to go? We'll see. All right, next time I'm going to cross off the list, though. Chris Klieman, Kansas State head coach. All right, I think he would definitely do good there. I think he would win a lot of ball games at Washington. Would be an interesting fit. Like I say, he's got those ties with the AD. Does that come into play? A lot of times it's about who you know, and that helps you get your foot in the door. but I don't think he leaves Kansas State. He's got the opportunity now to kind of run things in the Big 12 with Oklahoma and Texas leaving. So I think he stays there and runs that back. All right, next one I'm going to cross off, Lance Leipold, Kansas head coach. All right, he has won a ton of ball games in general. All right, and would be an interesting fit there. I think he could win at Washington more than he has at Kansas because Washington's made multiple college football playoffs. You know what I mean? So you're setting yourself up for success there, even though they are head of the Big Ten. They can win there. But I think he kind of has things rolling at Kansas. He's kind of a fit there, kind of an underrated, slept-on guy, So I think that comes down to these two candidates right here, Jedd Fisch and Ryan Grubb. I think these are probably going to be your finalists for the job. And very tough here. Do you go with Jedd Fisch, who it's proven he can improve a program, he can win ball games, and can recruit the West Coast? Or do you go with Ryan Grubb, try to keep things afloat, try to keep as many guys at Washington as possible? A lot of times you'll see that, which was kind of honestly why I was surprised Bama didn't even end up going with Tommy Rees, just so they could kind of keep guys in-house and just run it back. You know what I mean? So a lot of times you'll see that. So I think I'm going to have to mark off Jedd Fisch. I think the guy that Washington will hire is going to be Ryan Grubb, their offense coordinator. Is a really good offense coordinator, really good offensive mind. And I'd be curious to see what he does at the head coach level. Like I said, he is held out. I've been told and have confirmed that he's held out of Group of 5 head coaching jobs that he's been offered. He said, no, I want to run it back at Washington. So he's obviously holding out for something. And like I said, didn't go to Bama last year, didn't go to Notre Dame. He had offers to go be their OC. He did not. So I think this might be the job he's been holding out for. So I think this is who they're going to hire, Ryan Grubb. So as far as who I would hire on this list, realistically, I think those last 5 names are the 5 names you could pull probably. I'd definitely like to see what Chris Klieman or Lance Leipold could do out there. That's probably who I would hire, one of them, Klieman or Leipold. But I think it's going to come down to Fisch or Grubb, and I think they'll go with Grubb ultimately. But that's just my list. That's who I think they'll hire and who I think they should hire. Who do you think they'll hire? Who do you think they should hire? Let me know. Comment down below. Make sure to like this video and subscribe.